Hello and welcome back. Thank you for joining me once again for continuation of the story of my experiences when I was having my kids. From the last video, I stopped where I was explaining what I passed through the day I fell off the staircase. And just a recap of that scenario, just in case you've forgotten what you've watched or you haven't even watched that clip before. So on the period of time when I was pregnant with my first son, which is my fourth pregnancy with my ex-husband, I fell off the staircase while I was coming down to serve his dinner. And surprisingly, he was sitting down there and watching TV while my daughter wanted to come for my rescue. You know, she screamed, "Daddy, Daddy, Mommy fell." And he said, "Shut up," and, shushed her and dragged her back to her seat. So at that moment, I fell and I landed on the floor, and I was in a big shock that somebody who's supposed to be my husband, who's supposed to be my physical protector, somebody that's supposed to care for me and love me, was sitting there and watching me and did nothing. So I wasn't really sure of what what I was experiencing at that moment. Is it the pain of the fall? Is it the fact that I was 2 months pregnant? Or is it that I was confused? I was really confused. But I thank God for His grace. So I sat there for a little while trying to get myself together because, of course, I started feeling sharp pain all the way from my back to my waist. And I tried to, sit there, and I was just praying and asking God, "Please help me. Please help me. God, please help me." And He did. So within few minutes after I got myself together, I couldn't feel any pain anymore. I stood up and gradually climbed back to my room and laid down there. But being that I was pregnant, it wasn't too long that I started feeling the pains again. And the pain I was feeling was very complicated because I didn't really know the extent of what I've experienced during that fall. And unfortunately, I remembered one thing that my ex promised me some time ago while we were having disagreement. He said that he would never, ever want me to call police throughout this marriage. That the first time I tried to call police, that would be the end of the marriage. So I remembered that, should I call it a threat? I don't know, but I remembered it at that moment. So I was hesitating, should I call 911 because of the pain I was feeling and lose my marriage, or should I just deal with it? But I was also scared of my life because I don't know the extent of the fall could have in my body. So what I did was to call a friend. I had a prayer partner, a lady from Nigeria that I met at my church. So I called her and explained to her what I was dealing with. She couldn't come and pick me. Remember, I can drive, but I never driven since living with him. He never allowed me to drive, but I was driving back home before I joined him. So the challenge was, how do I get myself to this lady's house so that she can take me to the hospital? I tried to, come up with an idea, and eventually I did. So while he was sleeping, while he was taking a nap, I took the car key because I felt like I had to do something. I had to, because I don't want to have to regret not taking care of myself when I'm supposed to, just because I'm scared of somebody who really doesn't care about me. So before I continue, I want to apologize because this particular video will be longer than the normal videos I have posted, because honestly speaking, this is a topic, this is a scenario that I have struggled so much to talk about. And over the years, every time I start talking about this, it just brings up the pain and the emotion of what I've been through. So my goal is to try to wrap up these scenarios of my experiences having by kids as much as possible, so I can move on, trusting God to give me the grace to go through it without having to stop like I normally do. So permit me if this video is longer than normal. So back to the story. I took the key and drove myself to my friend's house. And this friend's house was about 20-25 minutes away from where we lived. When I came to her house, her and her husband, they screamed, seeing how I looked and what I looked like. Immediately, they rushed me to ER. And that was when the whole story about my pregnancy changed. What I experienced in the hospital when I got there was a lot of, nurse practitioners, the doctors, they were all rallying around me, trying to perform 1 or 2 tests, trying to figure out what the problem exactly was. But after all the tests that was performed, they couldn't find anything. And as they were waiting for the results of the test, I was having fake contraction. Like, contraction was happening every 5 minutes. Remember, this is 2 months pregnancy. So, the long story short was that doctor came to my room, to the room where I was laying. He drew his seat and he came close to the bed and he said, "Miss Ono, I want to talk to you because what we're seeing is very concerning. We didn't actually see anything wrong with you, but there is something wrong with you." So he said, "Please tell me, be very, very honest. Is everything okay with you back home? I mean, at home with your husband and the kids? Is everyone okay?" And I stopped to think. And that moment, every thought that came in my mind was all the threats. If you say anything to anybody, if you say anything to this person, this will be the end of the marriage. You cannot, all those threats were still coming in my mind. And I said to the doctor, "Everything is okay." He looked at me again and said, "Miss Ono, I'm asking you once again, are you sure that everything is okay? Because medically, there's nothing we could find that's wrong with you, but physically, we can obviously see that something is wrong. So are you saying that everything is okay?" I said, "Yes, everything is okay." And the doctor was like, "Well, okay, but we're gonna have to discharge you. And if anything happens or gets worse, call 911, because that's the only advice he could give me." But he was really looking at me with so much concern. That was how I was discharged again from that hospital after actually a lot of hours. I spent almost overnight there, but they couldn't find any reason to keep me because they couldn't find anything wrong with me and I'm not telling them anything. So they discharged me and I went back. But I went back to my friend's house this time. I didn't go back to my ex-husband's house. And that was a big issue with him because what he did, he started calling and demanding that I get home. But my friend's husband told him that the life of this young lady is precious to everyone who knows her, that they're not going to just sit and watch something happen to her. And they told him that first of all, he would need to come and pick me and get me home because they are not going to let me drive myself back again. And he said that he would never try to come and pick me, that if I know the same way I drove myself there, that should be the same way I should drive myself back to his house and immediately. But as you can see, at this moment, my friend and her husband, they were very, very concerned. They didn't know, because you know how it is. Marriage is supposed to be between a husband and wife. If anybody will put asunder between a husband and wife, that person will be held accountable before God. So everyone that knows about my situation are trying to be very careful so that they are not the one blamed that the marriage did not work. So they were, what they did was to contact our pastor, shared the story with the pastor, and the pastor spoke to me and said, I will be the one to decide if I want to go back the way I was feeling, or if I want to stay and go back to the hospital if things changes. So I decided to stay, because I know I wasn't completely feeling comfortable enough to go back until the next day. So the next day, I drove back home. Driving back home is a different story, which I'm going to continue from my next video, because when I came home, things changed again. But I would like to continue from that scenario on my next video. So please stay tuned and have a wonderful day. Thank you for your time. Bye now.